And Jeff, if you don't mind, share our wonderful sponsors and service providers that make this series possible. We'll be here all summer long with a plethora of amazing courses for you all the way through the end of August. And that is very much due to A1 Appliance Refrigeration Repair, Best Roofing, City Quiet Windows and Doors, Dynaserve, the Falcon Group, Hotwire Fission, K. Bender Rembaum, LGC Consulting or Full Profitability, The Paving Lady, Plastrage Insurance, Regal Paints, Reserve Advisors, Serpico, South State Bank, Southwest Elevator Company, Vote HOA Now, and WRG, a really amazing community that we have here. I encourage you all to reach out to them if you have an issue that they could help solve or you have a question. They really are a fantastic resource. On the evaluation form that Jeff will be sending out later, you'll have an opportunity to opt in to be contacted by any of those amazing service providers, as well as contact information for the Vote HOA Now team. You'll also have a little link for our upcoming webinars, which you can find on acebytsk.com. With that, I'll turn it over to Kathy and her wonderful team here at Vote HOA Now to take it away for the presentation.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being here today and taking the time. My name is Liz. I'm with Vote HOA Now. We are the industry experts in electronic voting. We do provide full service setup and management. And today we are going to teach you a little bit and deep dive into the choices for electronic voting and overcoming challenges. I have Kathy Slight. Kathy, you want to say hi? And then
Hi, everyone.
Ruthie Goldsby as well.
Good afternoon.
Will be presenting today. All right, so first, legal disclaimer. The materials contained in the presentation today are designed to enable you to learn more about the topics we cover. However, we are not attorneys, so we definitely recommend any legal advice to please seek your legal counsel. Today's outline, we are going to go over the legal overview, authority for electronic voting, service provider options, and then we're going to touch on some e-voting resolutions and rules. And then most importantly, those misconceptions and myths for electronic voting.
All right. So thank you, everyone. We're going to get started, as Liz mentioned, with the legal overview and discuss the authority for electronic voting. There we go. So depending on if you are in a condominium, a co-op, or an HOA, you have a different statute, but they are all very similar. So 718, of course, is your condominium, specifically 718.128. The co-op is 719.129, and the HOA 720.317. Bing, 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 right in a row there. Now you will see under the condominium statute, they have an administrative code rule that further defines their elections and their electronic voting. So if you haven't reviewed your statutes, go check them out. We're going to discuss them in general here today, but you should know what they are for your specific product, for what you're in, to know the guidelines that you need to be following for sure. Other statutes that you'll want to consider besides these for electronic voting is the notice of the meeting of election or election and a vote. Sometimes there's a notice of meeting statute for notice. Sometimes there's a notice requirement for both your election and votes, like amendment votes and things like that. You'll also want to pay attention to the owner date of record. This is most often in the co-op, not in the co-op, in the corporation code, and it refers to who has the right to get the notice and who has the right to vote. When we're talking about electronic voting, we're not talking about emailing in a paper ballot or typing into an email saying, I vote for this person, candidate X, and using that as your vote. We're talking about an online voting system that is technically like a proxy. The system gathers that ballot information and submits it for you. You make your selections and it gets submitted. There's going to be certain guidelines of what's allowed for that e-voting system. So things to look for when you are looking at all those codes, when you go to your state statutes, what should you be looking for? There's certain language Liz, can you, there we go. Sorry, a little delay, I think, on my end. Well, there's certain language in the code that you want to look for. So we're always looking for the words electronic or online. They're used interchangeably. And the word ballot or voting often with that. So electronic ballot, electronic voting. We sometimes see a electronic election we've seen, or online voting. So any of those kind of wording choices, you'll want to go through those statutes and look at those and read all of those. Again, looking for the words electronic notice, specifically looking for phrasing like that the ballots or the votes count towards quorum for your meeting. That one's so important. Phrases that maybe even not mentioned in the statutes, like we don't ever see that a proxy is needed with an electronic vote. So look for that. You'll see that it's nowhere stated in that section. And that ballots or the votes count towards the reconvene of a meeting if you need to.
And when you say, Ruth, that if you're going to have them count towards the reconvene, that you would need to mention that in the original information that you send out.
Yes, thank you. So we're going to talk specifically with the language I have listed for the condo statute. The language is virtually identical for the other statutes, but because the condo statute has that little extra section for the admin code, we want to make sure we discuss that. So in essence, the beginning of the statute for all three products is that the association may conduct elections and other votes through an internet-based online voting system. This is where it's different than email, an internet-based online voting system. If a unit owner consents, and this is new if you've seen your statutes before, this changed last year. This word electronically got added in for the condos. If a unit owner consents electronically or in writing to online voting. So this statute is kind of nice for the condos. It didn't get updated for the HOAs, not sure why, but the condos basically, you can have owners opt in at the same time that they're basically accepting to opt in for that vote and voting. So all one fell swoop. You don't have to have people touch it twice, if you will. It's great if you do, if you're getting certificates in advance and getting that primary voting email so that you have it, you're great. But they did throw that in. So you can electronically email people if you're in a condo and get those consents right then and there as well. And it goes on to state that you have to meet these following requirements, that the system has to authenticate the identity of the owner, has to protect the secrecy and integrity of the ballot, and you have to have a method to confirm delivery, most often a receipt. Now, the statute goes on about the e-voting system itself or the online voting system, and the guidelines that have to be covered there kind of mimic what we just read. They're actually kind of duplicated. So have to authenticate the owner's identity. Same thing as the other said. Have to ensure a vote is not altered in transit. And again, this typically is handled most often by providing that owner a receipt, which is the next bullet. Transmit a voting receipt to the owner so they can confirm how it was tabulated. And then it goes on about the secrecy that we just saw in the previous slide, that for elections, it has to be able to separate any authentication or identifying information from the actual ballot so that no one can tie a vote to a specific owner. So, and then it goes on to that last one that you have to be able to support any recount, inspection, or review of the tabulations. So some very specific guidelines there. Now, it also goes on to state that this is what we mentioned just 2 slides ago, that look for the language. It says that an e-vote counts towards quorum for the meeting. So important when you're having an annual meeting, knowing that if you are getting candidate election results and people are voting as they are voting, that also counts towards quorum for their meeting. So you don't have to worry if 3 people show up if you've reached quorum with your electronic votes. And the paragraph just explains all of that, but basically counts towards quorum for your meeting. It also then goes on, and I promise we're almost done with this, the state statute section, that you have to create a resolution. Now, you have to, within that resolution, there's some guidelines on this. You have to provide owners to receive notice of that they have the opportunity to vote through an online voting system. So basically, once you establish your resolution that you're going to offer electronic voting, you need to tell them. You need to distribute the resolution so they see it. You have to establish reasonable procedures and deadlines for them to consent either in writing, electronically, or via paper to online voting. So you got to tell them when they have to opt in by, that kind of stuff. And then, of course, you have to provide written notice of the meeting at which the resolution will be considered, and then mail it, deliver it, everything you normally do for any type of resolution. Now, when we talk about resolutions, there is one thing that has changed recently, is that if you are in the process of creating your resolution and maybe you hadn't distributed it yet to everybody, the new law that's come to play is that if you've accepted if electronic ballots have been gone out and people have submitted them, you have the right to accept them, even though your resolution hasn't been fully processed yet. So that's kind of nice in case you had a little administrative hiccup there. So now in the condo section, again, this is the admin code rules. Doesn't apply to the HOAs, although they're really good ideas. So, you might want to follow them too if you are an HOA, to adopt some of these guidelines if your bylaws allow.
Hey, Ruth, I'm
Yes.
just going to interject really quickly because Gerald and others may be having similar issues. If you cannot see the slides, since a Zoom update at the top, you have a couple of tabs. One says Liz's screen and the other says webinar. Click on the other tab and you should then be able to see the slides. Sorry for the interruption. Back to you.
Okay.
We needed that right in the middle of all those
Yeah,
state statutes and condo.
I know. It's like
Admin
we get to the
codes,
fun
yes.
stuff. It's so much more fun, I swear.
Yeah.
But we got to get to the nitty gritty, get through the nitty gritty first. So the condo admin rules, a few things that state specifically for elections, that if you're in a condo, you should be aware of these anyway, because they applied even for paper, although we have come across managers that didn't know about these. So minimum 14 days of voting. So if you're think that you can get the vote done in 10 days, you're not following the state statute. It's recommended you change your date of your meeting and renotice, so that you're following the statute properly. Candidates must be listed in alphabetical order by last name. Candidates cannot say incumbent after their name. So you cannot say, candidate A, comma, incumbent. If the candidate submits their biography and it says they were the former board secretary or the current treasurer, that's fine. But the association should not be listing the word incumbent with the names on the ballot. No write-in spaces are allowed for the condos, which makes it really nice for everyone there that you do your call for candidates. You have your candidates on the ballot. You don't have to worry about write-ins. And then, of course, it's been mentioned now, this is the third time, secret ballot. Your ballot is secret. So they really hammer it home in those first two sections. And then the condo in the admin code says it again, secret ballot.
Now Ruth, oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I was gonna say, we mentioned earlier about the owner date of record. This is where
The most forgotten thing
in Florida. What's that?
I said the owner date of record is the most overlooked item.
Yes.
Really is. Yes.
Yes. So it does say that if not otherwise provided by your bylaws, the owner date of record for determining shareholders entitled to notice of and to vote at the meeting, at an annual or special meeting, is the close of the business day on the day before the first notice is delivered. So that's a lot to say, the day before your notice goes out. But if your bylaws state a different date, or if you have your resolution that specifies a date of record instead, otherwise owners do not change throughout a vote. And this applies to an election. So this doesn't apply to amendment votes, just an election. So what that means is in this 14 days of voting, if you have an owner change because you sold, a condo is sold and a new owner comes in, if that happened after that owner date of record, you don't change that owner. The new owner does not vote. It's whoever was an owner at the date of that record was set. So it's confusing, it's overlooked, but it's really great to establish that in your resolution. Check to see if it's in your bylaws. Otherwise, put that in your resolution so you know it. Now, your resolution does apply to condos, HOAs, co-ops. Everyone should have a resolution. And we have seen it that resolutions sometimes are very simple, stating that we're going to follow all the current state statutes and our governing documents. So in that case, the association then puts together some rules to further define what those state statutes are, because rules are sometimes a little easier to create and update and change if needed. And those rules would have all of these types of things listed about no secret, no, or it must be secret, no write-in, days of voting, and again, looking at your bylaws and your own documents to make sure it doesn't say that the meeting must be on the third Wednesday of the fourth month, things like that. So get that resolution or those rules together so you have it every single year. Now,
And again, if you have questions about your
sure.
resolution or your rule, you should, go speak with your legal representative
Yes.
as well and have them review it before you send it out.
Yes, we always recommend, you might start with your attorney when you're doing that resolution because they do it for all their associations. So they might have a template that's good and that the board can review and use that as your starting point. Now, again, we mentioned that we haven't seen it in the state statutes. So our favorite thing is no more proxies. So you're reducing your proxies. You might want to put in that you can still send proxies via paper if people request and they don't want to vote electronically and they're not intending to come to the meeting. So keep that in mind too. You might want to come up with a system of who gets those proxies. Do we send it to only those without email until they transition and do that opt-in? Do we just make it available upon request? That kind of thing. So that should also go in your resolution, which we're going to get to what other things can go in your resolution, but this was just all your state statutes requirements. All right, let's move forward a slide. Oh, so we just discussed that. So one of the questions we get is, well, my documents say this, you're telling me the state statute says that. Again, confirm with your legal counsel, but if we're all here for CE credit, so we all have our CMCAs, remember that I think this was like M100 page 1, the hierarchy of documents. So federal, of course, first, we're talking state second here at the top, and then our declaration and bylaws are at the lower end of that hierarchy. So state is going to almost always supersede and trump your bylaws or your CC&Rs. So go default to the state. If it says that you can do electronic voting, you can do it. So Liz, I've been talking a lot.
Yes, thank you, Ruth.
What trends
Ruth is the best at all those slides anyway.
It's a lot. It's a lot. I constantly am reading the statutes and going back and forth and fine tooth comb. And yeah. So Liz, what trends coming up in the future here are going to shape our path for electronic voting?
Yeah, so we found some really great stats provided by the Foundation for Community Association Research. And most importantly, 1/3 of US housing is in community associations. That's huge. And then we also have some numbers as far as how many community association elected members of boards and committees there are. Look at that, volunteer hours performed annually by board members and committee members. And so they already have a full plate. And then also the estimated value of time provided by HOA boards and committee members is $3.4 billion. So, I mean, that's huge.
That's a lot of hours spent. Hopefully switching to electronic voting can reduce a few of those hours.
Absolutely. And then
we take away those headaches.
Yeah, and we want to throw in some fun eco stats because as an e-voting company, we're all about that. And I mean, just switching 1,000 people from paper ballots to e-voting ballots can save over 25 pounds of paper. Just think about the money involved with that, the time involved with that. And, we just like to express that e-voting does have the lowest carbon footprint per vote casted. And, it just has a lower environmental impact. But most importantly, it does increase that participation without increasing the waste and the environmental harm. And we're just reaching owners that we hadn't before. Now, I think the most common misconception is, our older generation. I can't tell you how many times I hear when I'm at trade shows or in front of a board how they are worried about an older group. I can just say that, if my grandma is having concerns with her phone, because she does have a smartphone, she'll call me and I'll help her walk her through it. But definitely work with a system that is easy to use for any age. I know that we're not going to have any problems with millennials, which is my age group. I mean, we grew up with computers, and Gen Z, ages 13, is now making up 4% of home buyers. So we do have to accommodate other generations as well and factor in that we do want to reach them, and e-voting really is doing that and proving that we are. Do we have any questions we want to answer right now? All
It
right.
looks like we might have one for a material change. And yes, we're running all types of different votes that we're seeing: material changes, lobby designs, paint colors, representation of the board of directors for an insurance claim or a lawsuit, or anything, that would need a vote of the membership can be conducted electronically. Budget approvals, so all kinds of things we could think of. And then, do you work with election monitors, either private or DVPR, if the state requires it? And there is that other level of, let's call it an independent party that is receiving that information, then yes, absolutely. Any of your voting providers should say yes to that question, that they're willing to work with that single point of contact to make sure that you have a successful vote.
The second part of that material change for like paint color, the statute does say elections and other unit owner votes. So check with your association legal counsel, because again, your documents may be slightly different. And so that's why sometimes that gets a little confused, but.
And I think some of these other questions we're going to answer here. I'm going to turn it over, I believe, to Kathy on the service provider options.
Yep. All right, let's talk about service level choices. Now, we know more than anyone, there are several choices out there, and we always like to make it clear about each one of them. So we've got our full service provider. This really is the highest security level and the lowest risk. It just, the board, the manager, turned that process over to the full service provider, frees them up to work on other projects in the community. Lets professionals do what they do best. These online voting companies are professionals, and that's all they do. Well, of course, they're running votes, elections, that type of thing. So it's almost like turning the landscaping over to your landscaper, your legal representation over to your attorney. You wouldn't have your car mechanic work on any legal matters for you. So look for those full service providers that are doing everything for you. It is a complete third-party separation, and it just means that the board members, the committee members, and the managers have a lower involvement. Some of the information they should be able to get during a vote is, of course, where they're at with quorum, and any how to answer any questions, of course, that come in. Now, some of our biggest competition, of course, are these self-service portals or management company softwares. We're seeing a lot of states change their state statutes to include that independent layer. So I think we're going to see more of that going across the US. But for right now, we have our self-service portals and our management company software add-ons. This definitely is more work for the manager and maybe the committee member or the board member. They're all involved in the process, which is something that could be risky. And if one of them accidentally slips saying, oh, Ruth's ahead by 10 votes, that would be a reason to to say that we have to start that vote over again. So, these have to be trusted individuals, and they have to remember how to set it up, run it, and manage themselves and the vote year after year. There is no third party separation. That means that there is no professional representative that is going to help answer those questions or help you through a situation. Or maybe we've got a recall, or maybe someone wants to view all of those voting reports and challenges the vote itself. So those are just a lot of reasons to look at a full service provider. We're all very comfortable with representing our clients, and they are actually more risk for the association, like I said earlier, that a full service
if you have at
provider.
all any kind of a contentious community or a contentious vote, you want that full service provider to kind of give you that legal separation, because you don't want people coming in and asking you, especially elections. Everyone's so, am I winning? When I was a manager at a large on-site, we had 16 people running, and all 16 came to me and asked where they were in the standings.
Wink, wink,
And
cup of
it's, yeah, just
coffee.
give me a wink and a nudge, just give me an elbow, just give me a smirk, or, and
Yeah.
it was so nice to be able to say, I don't know. All I know is we have quorum, and we're gonna have a meeting, and it'll be announced that night.
Well,
So,
and more importantly, that's just for elections. When we get to talking about document amendments and bylaws, our CC&R changes and whatnot, you want to make sure that everything you're doing is at the highest level of professionalism. These are documents that are going to govern the association for years to come, and these are changes that the membership needs to vote yes or no on. And it really is great to have that third party separation and provider that is running and managing that vote for you, so that when you receive that full final report, you can take it and have it recorded. It makes it much easier for all parties involved. So that, not only elections, for any kind of membership votes that are, anything that they're going to carry with them for years to come after it's passed. And then our favorite thing, to say, keep in mind, free or almost free, and there is a lot of free out there, means that, your information, your data, those emails you're providing, everything is the product. The good news is that everything in Florida for elections has to remain secret. So if your provider at least had that option, that would be something you would want to. But it's okay to ask what they're doing with your owner data and make sure that it isn't being used for any other purposes besides running a vote for the community. So I think, of course, we've all talked about all vendors are not the same. We always recommend work with someone who is a professional in the industry. They specialize and understand our unique niche that we have here. I mean, it really is. I don't know how many years I told someone I was a community manager, and they still, even my dad, didn't understand what my role was at this company that I worked at for over 10 years. So a funny thing, we're becoming more recognized, but it's still not there yet. It's nice if they have that kind of experience. Of course, U.S. companies know our state statutes, what the structure is. When you're working in every single state, you really have to be right on it and know where all of your resources are. That third party separation, we can't say enough about it, because it's nice to have someone to answer all those important questions even after the vote. And then tooting our own horn here, an industry leader in education. How do we learn about e-voting? Who do we go to? Gosh, what is our best resource? And those vendors are providing that information to you so you can learn.
I want to
All
reiterate,
right.
and I
Mhm.
promise you all, I am not paid to say this, but I have worked with Vote-HOA Now in the past, and they're not some electronic web company that also happens to do this. This is all they do. So this is, and again, there are so many do you make your own websites and do your own website commercials out there where, yeah, you can get some kind of voting plugin and install it and do it yourself. But you do something like that, you're asking for trouble. Look at your iPhone. Every day, for example, every day there's an update to your favorite app that has to take place to make it work with something, to make it fit within the laws and structures and everything. That's happening all the time. The last thing you want to do is try to do something like this yourself fail at making an update, something gets exposed, then you put the board member and the association in jeopardy of a lawsuit. This is all they do. This is the kind of company you want to do this with. Anyway, sorry for the interruption. Back to you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, we love hearing that. You can jump on anytime and talk about how wonderful we are. But truly, he is right. We are specifically serving the industry and associations only. And it's a lot to manage just with that one layer. I can't imagine if we had a whole nother layer of clients that we were serving, because believe it or not, there are state statutes and rules and regulations that govern all of those industries that vote. Okay,
So we have a
shall
couple
we?
questions,
Okay.
but I think it's best that we kind of go through this first part of our deep dive, because I think most of them will probably be answered in that. I just want to
Yeah,
let
I
those people
agree.
know that we're getting there.
All right. So deep dive part 1. Now, Ruth brought this up. It is part of the state statutes, and it's a good idea and now a requirement to create an e-voting resolution. She had some simple language that said, we're just going to follow the state statutes and our governing documents, and then we're going to set some guidelines for all of these things. We're talking about what type of meeting we're going to have. We even have some new legislation that could be signed and passed on July 1st that is going to change some of these things. In-person meetings, online only, or a mix of a hybrid meeting. So lots of conversations about, do we record these meetings? How long do we keep them? We were going to see some new changes coming out too. So be concise as you can. Make sure you are bringing yourself up to date with these state statutes and making those necessary changes as they are changed. But these are the most common types of meeting that we see. Very rarely do we see an in-person meeting, but I think we see them more in Florida than we do anywhere else, because people love to go to meetings. Timing and notice requirements. Make sure you're going to let them know how long open voting is, when they should expect to see their notice. Maybe you have a regular month that you're having your election in, and you've got a time frame. Make sure that you're leaving that required amount of time for open voting, which of course is also the owner date of record deadline right there. And this call for candidates period is becoming our best friend. Send out that call for candidates. Start at 60 days, saying save the date, and please submit your intent to run for the board of directors. You must have these are your qualifications. So you're going to put that information into your resolution or your rule, just trying to outline everything you can think of. And, resolutions or rules are just a guideline for us to follow, and they should be reviewed each year, and they should be updated as necessary.
So before we go on, we have a couple questions that pertain to that previous slide.
Okay.
So how do we handle hybrid? And that was on that, if we can go back to it for our guidelines. How do we handle hybrid when some paper ballots and some online? You want to give a little example of that, Kathy? How would they handle that?
Yes, I can. So a hybrid meeting in my mind is that we have some people voting electronically, and we have some people voting by paper, and we have some voting that are coming to attend the meeting in person. So electronically still is going to be the same process. It's going to be a secret ballot. We're going to run that election. We see these close the day before, the same time paper ballots are due, or the day of the meeting. Then any secret ballot envelopes, we're talking specifically about elections because we all are required to have one each and every year. If we've got those secret ballot envelopes, you're going to have hopefully a list of all of the lots or units that have not voted. Those are the addresses you can accept a secret ballot from. Once you've confirmed they're on the who has not voted list, you are going to open that and separate it. That's kind of separating the ballot from the person. So this is the secret process. And then you are going to tally those and add them to the electronic voting tally. So if it was me at the meeting, I would say Kathy Slight received 75 votes. Gosh, I hope 75 votes to sit on the board of directors, and we added 15 votes by paper. So the total votes for Kathy Slight are blank. So that's how I would announce it, and I would note it in the meeting minutes. So lots of fun things there. Any other questions?
Well, I think you already answered the other, can my HOA close paper and electronic voting the evening before the election? And they
Yes,
also have
we
in-person
love seeing
voting.
those close at the same time.
But
Yeah,
sometimes
I
it's,
think
if
Okay.
your meeting's at 7 p.m., sometimes you'll close it at noon the day of. So in case you're getting last minute mail in the office.
yeah, I think some of these questions will be answered on the next couple of slides, Kathy.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So who should be involved in the setup? No one. You know, we typically will work with the manager or the management company or their admin, someone who does not have any kind of, tie to the community, or, it takes advantage or has any advantages of someone winning or losing. So, board committee members, there's still a lot of work for them to do. They still are processing those paper ballots. They're still opening those. They're still doing those tallies. So if you have a committee that says, what are we going to do now? We're adding electronic voting. I think there's still a lot of work for them to do. And it's very important that we're making sure these tallies are correct. So, make them feel comfortable that they still have a lot ahead. Available to answer questions. So the manager in most cases has experience with electronic voting, or they're going through their first experience. And, answering questions is one of the things that you're going to do. We have a rule at our company. We don't talk to owners when they call into our office. We always kindly refer them back to the community manager who is in charge of setting up that vote. So that's where we're going to send them. And so they have to be able to answer those day-to-day questions. Provide any ballot information. Maybe someone's requesting a proxy or a paper ballot and they have to take care of that. Approvals on all kinds of things, language, ballots, anything that we're going to share with the owners, we're going to get that approval. And, we're always grateful for the second or third set of eyes that go on the documents that we push out. And of course, that person is going to receive that final report. And oftentimes we might copy the attorney or the CPA or a third party on those results if they want everyone to get them at the same time. So those are all things still that you are going to think about and put in your resolution or your rule. Now, these are just some of the fun things, of course, that we all remember, but it's nice to go over them again. We need to know what the quorum is. It is actually different for a lot of different membership votes and for elections. What are the positions? What are the terms and the lengths? Let's refer back to our old set of meeting minutes from last year and see where those terms lie. Did we have to appoint anyone during the year? What do we have going on? So, that could take some time. Start a little early and make sure that you understand all of the positions that are open. Who can vote? That fun little owner date of record is going to save your life. Paper mailings, in most cases, you are still going to send your official notice by US mail. It's unfortunate. It's becoming more unreliable. That is why that save the date notice and your official notice is so important. Hopefully one of them will get to that owner and they can say they received those notices. If they've said that they will receive notices electronically, which is entirely different from electronic voting, then, in most cases, you can attach the whole packet to an electronic ballot. So they will receive their notices at the same time voting opens, just like everyone else. What to do if an owner votes by paper, by proxy, and electronic. I mean, maybe 10% of the time they're going to do everything that you ask them to do. So which vote is going to prevail? And in most cases, it's going to be that electronic ballot. But it's good to say which votes will prevail if they do vote multiple ways. And then, of course, don't forget these delinquency requirements. Maybe we have some owners who are not eligible because they have not paid their assessments, or there's something else going on that makes them ineligible. These are typically done right before voting closes. So make sure that that is in your resolution and that you have a process for any of those. Delinquencies are the most common, so that's why we're using that example, but there could be other situations that, apply. Announcing the results. Do you announce the tallies? Do you just announce who's won? Those are fun things, and make sure that you understand. Are you listing them in the order of the most votes received, or can you just randomly announce your new vote? What happens if we have a tie? We've heard so many stories over the years of rock, paper, scissors, cut the straw. One person, pulls out and says, I don't want to run. I'm giving it to the other person. But it's nice to have a process in your head and on your rule. Maybe you're get a card deck out and you're, pulling cards or, something. Just make sure that you think about it, because I don't know about you, but my first tie vote was very interesting and I was not prepared for it, and it will never happen to me again.
Well, and I believe in Florida, if somebody doesn't concede the position, they must do the runoff then. They have to do a runoff vote. So
yeah. And that means a secondary vote that we're going
Yeah.
to start over again between those candidates.
So make sure you have it in there that if there's a tie, that you discuss it with the people who tied to see if somebody wants to concede. Otherwise, you got another vote to run.
So Ruth, when two individuals own and reside in a unit but share an email address, is it required to determine which individual is submitting the electronic vote?
Great question. Typically, in your own association's governing documents, there's a requirement for a signature on that outer envelope. So because it's secret, it's usually on the outer envelope, and they have to put their address of their unit or their property address, and they have to sign and possibly even date. So yes, you need to confirm who is voting. So make sure your e-voting provider is not just using a encrypted link that allows somebody to vote without determining who that person is. Make sure your provider uses some kind of process to gather an electronic signature, following state guidelines for an electronic signature.
And or registration. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Which is the same thing as the federal guidelines for an electronic signature. So it's nice. The state of Florida and the federal guideline is the exact same. So
And that's a good question to ask your potential e-voting vendors
Mhm.
as well. So how are they going to authenticate that and check?
Yes. So
All
you
right,
should get
Ruth.
you should get a final report showing who it was sent to and who actually signed in and registered. And by following a registration process, this is a really nice point from a legal side, is that it puts the onus on the person doing it, that they are who they say they are. It takes the legal liability off the association if you say this is who it was sent to with this name and this email, and then your record shows who actually registered with their name and their email and did it.
And we haven't even talked about undeliverable emails is another thing we always bring up. With an e-voting provider, you're going to know right away which emails you are unable to deliver to. It's going to be faster than your return mail through the U.S. Post Office. So you can correct those emails. You can contact those owners. You can get an updated email. So lots of things that you can do to make sure that you're making the most of the e-voting opportunity for everyone.
Don't throw those out. Just like you have to keep those return mail to show proof of attempt of delivery. You have to same thing with the failures. You have to keep those showing that proof of attempt. So don't throw those out. A lot of people think that they're just junk and get rid of them. Make sure your e-voting provider provides them to you as well. Yeah.
Okay. Part 2. We're going even deeper.
Dive deeper, Kathy. Dive, baby.
All right, Ruth, are you kicking it off?
Me with these.
Okay, I think we all are. I thought Ruth was starting, but I will.
Yeah.
So some different misconceptions and myths. Older owners want paper. Technology accessibility for older owners. What do we think about that?
I think you covered that in that other slide. About
it's good to talk
I'm
about
old
it
and
again,
I don't want
though.
paper.
Yeah. I'm
Exactly.
in that 65+ group.
Yeah. Make sure that you're giving them enough time to understand it, and ask your e-voting provider if they have something they can share with you that you can share with your owners. I always say share the same thing with everyone. That way everyone knows exactly what they're talking about.
I will say
don't underestimate them. They're doing things electronically.
Yes, there seems to be this misconception for sure that it's too hard for older owners. They don't do it. But as Kathy mentioned, they're doing everything online. If they travel, And if they have a summer home somewhere else besides Florida, they're making those reservations, they're doing their financials, they're doing all of that kind of stuff online. At the very minimum, they're talking to their grandkids, you know, those kind of things. As long as the system is easy to follow, they'll do it. We have great stats of that group, the 55 plus, is actually the highest level of participation because they want to participate, number one. Two, they have the time to do it and they will read everything. So they will read all the candidates, all the information, everything you get put on that ballot, they will read it.
Yeah, and then the lack of all owner email addresses. I mean, we do hear that, but you have to start somewhere. And, you know, as Kathy mentioned, in that call for candidates or when you're reaching out for the save the date, just make sure you're reaching out and getting the most updated information before your vote. It's just a good annual practice to get that updated information.
And one of the funnest ways is send a group email. You're probably sending e-blast out to your community anyway. Do it right before and say, this is your primary voting email address. Unless we hear from you, you will receive in your invitation to vote by this email address. Please have it to us by at least the day voting starts or a few days before. So set yourself a due date there too.
We have a question that I think kind of ties into this a little bit too about email addresses from Bernie. And yes, Bernie, he's asking, can we send the electronic voting information to all residents at the time of an election? And the first step would be that they opt into agreeing to vote electronically. So we know that the condo statute is changing momentarily to say yes, that they can opt in at the same time. The HOA statute is not changing, but we have talked to many association attorneys who believe that they can defend that wholeheartedly. So you just want to make sure that your
it's
attorney,
a description of in writing.
Yes. You just want to make sure that your attorney agrees with it and can back it up, and then have your e-voting company just on their invitation message, perhaps say by clicking the link and registering to vote, you are opting in to vote electronically. So it's kind of a silly statement to have happen at the same time, but you know, if that's what you got to do to cover yourself. But as Kathy mentioned, electronic voting is different. Opting in for that is separate than opting in for electronic notice. So you can put on your ballots as well that question, would you like to opt in for electronic notice? And then you'll start gathering those opt-ins for electronic notice too. Really cut down on some paper usage.
Don't miss any opportunity to gather information from them, which goes along with the security and safeguarding owner data and what happens with our emails. I mentioned this earlier. This is the best question you do is ask your e-voting provider what they're going to do with those emails. The answer should be that they are only using them for the purposes of running this vote, and that every time they run a vote for you, they will be asking for new data because that other data is archived and removed. Liz, what about nominations from the floor?
I think that is a question we are asked a lot.
All the
nominations
time.
from the floor.
Well, I think it's, you know, the best part is I think the Florida statute covers it. You have your call for candidates, your period, and the condo one says no write-ins.
Yeah, no write-ins.
That's the same as no nominations from the floor.
It's another great thing if you're used to nominations from the floor and you're creating your resolution or your rule, be sure and add it in there. After the call for candidates due date, if your attorney agrees, you will not be taking nominations from the floor because your meeting is virtual or whatever the other situations are that make it very difficult. If someone goes crazy and they nominate themselves at the meeting, if you're looking for someone for a volunteer, we always said everyone who raised their hand got a job that night. You could put them on a list, you could vet them along with the other candidates. And if something happened, you could ask them to step in at that time and appoint them. So there still is a job for everyone in the community who wants to raise their hand and help.
All right, we have about 10 minutes. We do want to leave some time if there's any questions, so feel free to put those in the Q&A. We can answer those at the end.
Nice.
Um,
I think
but
we answered these first couple bullets already, so.
yeah, I
Yeah.
really think
And I
so
think I've been
too.
looking at Evelyn's question here. How and
Mhm.
when will a certificate of attendance be issued? I think you're asking me if they vote electronically and they submit their ballot, Evelyn, they're going to receive a receipt immediately after their vote is submitted. If they are attending a virtual meeting, that is outside of the electronic voting process, and you may have a registration process that they're following to register for that meeting so that you can make sure they are an owner of record. So I hope that helps answer your question there.
Yeah. And if it was about the certificate of attendance for this presentation, Jeffrey will answer that again at the end.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Thanks,
It could
Jeff.
be. Yes. It's not all about online
Oh.
voting, right?
Yeah, the certificates, CEU credit will be reported by Vote-HOA-Now, correct? So I'm going to get you all the attendance sheets, and then
Yes.
will managers be getting I know board members can request a certificate, but are not going to be sent a certificate automatically. How about with managers? How do you handle
Yes, we will
certificates of
email them
attendance?
the certificate once we
Okay.
get the approval that they were accepted by the DVPR with their CAN number.
Sounds good. And folks, remain on till the end, because partial attendance will not get you a certificate for this class. So I will be sending them the official Zoom attendance sheet. We can tell with the timestamps, time in and time out.
And we still have more to share with you, so don't go yet. We need a signature on the ballot or envelope. We talked about that, meeting the federal level of those electronic signatures and registration processes. So this is going to take care of it electronically for you. And, we think election ballots, amendment ballots, they all need to be signed. So you would follow that process during any vote. I'll go ahead and just do the next one, and then you guys can jump in. Percentage par values, 1 vote per lot or unit, all of those things. Most industry professionals are familiar with those that are different from HOAs, which might be 1 vote per lot or unit, and with condos that could have percentages or par values. So it doesn't matter. They can all be the same. They can all be different. You just have to list what
Just
their
make
voting
sure you
value
ask
is.
your e-voting provider if they can handle what you have. And then also concerns about additional cost, or we've had some questions today with pricing. You're going to want to make sure you get with that e-provider and really ask about the pricing structure and how they handle that. And then, yeah, also if you think you might have a reconvene meeting, what's the price for that? Mailers, notices, envelopes. Are you sending them, or is your e-voting provider sending them? And then I just think there's extra time involved door knocking to get quorum. I don't know. When I was a manager back in the day, I know I was tasked with that. So this is definitely something to help you not have to go door to door anymore. I really hope you're not. The end result, a trusted system that is easy for owners to vote, no miscounted ballots, authenticated results that are instant with a much higher participation rate. You're going to achieve quorum before you even get to your meeting, which is much more reliable than that door to door or calling your neighbor saying, please come to the meeting. We need you to join in order to even hold it. And then also a duly elected board with normal rotation of terms. And at the end of the day, make your board and the manager look like superheroes with no more confusing proxies, which is huge. And they get
really,
a voting receipt after they voted. So the owner knows
most professional
exactly.
we've ever been in our industry with the voting receipt. Yes. If anybody has questions, may I see your electronic voting receipt, please? So just think how professional that is. And then you have time to answer their question after you receive that.
We have a great comment. My 55 plus community from Lois had over 70% participation in e-voting. And yes, we're obviously seniors. So
Love
there you go.
it.
Yeah.
Don't discount
that.
that
It is
group.
true.
Yes.
I can attest to that statistic, because
Mhm.
one of my clients was recently used the services of Vote-HOA-Now, and they would always struggle to get over 60%. I think their documents require 55%. I forget what the actual number is, but with the electronic voting process from Vote-HOA-Now in place, they set an all-time record and got over 81%.
Wow.
81% participation, and that's also a 55 and over.
And keep in mind too, for those type of amendment votes with those higher participation, it may take more than a month. We talk about the voting time frame and things like that. So consider amendment votes with those higher, you may have to set a 3-month time frame and have a meeting or a town hall announcing that this is starting and here it is, and let's answer your questions, and then the vote goes live. And if you don't hit your participation rate, that vote can be extended.
Yep.
So confirm that you can keep extending.
And saying 90 days is amazing. I remember having 2 amendments go for 2 or 3 years. So that is no longer the case for those, which are some of the most important things that communities do, is amend their documents to meet new guidelines and include new trends and that type of thing.
Absolutely. And while the ladies are looking over some of the other questions submitted, I just want to mention, if you haven't already done so, press that chat button one time, simply so it appears. I'm going to wait 30 seconds, then I'll put the evaluation link in there once again, because if you're just pressing it now, you're not going to see what we put in there earlier. So press that chat button one time, please. Back to you, ladies.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate the opportunity to share what we know. We remain available. This info email is good to get to everyone in our office. Turning it over to you, Marielle.
So we do have Frederico real quick says, what do you see on the receipts? So your voting receipt, it doesn't really specify in the statute what should be on that receipt. However, we believe it should show the date and time that the vote was received, their cast, and how that person voted, and their property identifiers, and possibly their vote weight if it is something other than 1. So
Thanks so much, Ruth. Thanks so much, Kathy and Liz, as well. Great presentation. I just wanted to remind everybody that you guys will be able to, in the next couple business days, you'll be able to watch this recording on acebytsk.com. You'll be able to refer back to it if you missed a slide or you want to share it with your colleagues, your community, your board. I encourage you to do so, as well as all of the webinars from this whole summer will be up on acebytsk.com on our resources center. So I hope you guys take advantage. You can also find our upcoming webinars coming up every single Wednesday, all summer long on acebytsk.com. So I hope to see many of you again. Other than that, I encourage you to reach out to Kathy, Liz, and Ruth, the team at Vote-HOA-Now, to learn more, any questions you guys may have forgotten to ask. Otherwise, thank you so much. I know Jeff might stick around for a minute at the end here just to go over any technical difficulties you guys might be having with the evaluation form. Other than that, we really appreciate you being here with us and spending your Wednesday afternoon with the ACE and Vote-HOA-Now team. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's always great to work with y'all, and thanks for being a supporter of our group here over at ACE. We appreciate you very much. And you will not be sorry. The communication from this communication company, which is lacking with too many communication companies out there, it exists with them. And again, we are not paid to say this. This is, I have experienced this company, and I would recommend them wholeheartedly.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Jeff.
that's funny, Jeff. Thank you for that. We always say that we do this thing called communication. It's an old-fashioned method that was used years ago that seemed to work well. We answer our emails and we answer our phones. So it really helps out when there's something confusing or there's questions.
I think the key is former managers, so we get it.
That makes a
Former
big difference.
managers, and you're still smiling. That's not easy to do. And for all of you managers and board members out there, mind your mental health. This is not an easy gig. We know you don't have it easily. Take care of yourself. Do what you got to do to remain mentally healthy, because we know a lot of you are getting beaten up out there. And try to do the best to remember that it's not necessarily you they're upset with. It's an idea. It's a concept. If you can do your best to remember that, it should make your lives a lot easier. So, but again, thank you, everybody.